Six Sigma is a powerful methodology designed for finding the waste in a process, analyzing operational processes traditionally applied to manufacturing. Application of Six Sigma methodology will define, measure, analyze, improve, and control the problem-solving areas in an effort to pinpoint areas of waste and targets for improvement. This project will utilize Six Sigma for application in a service environment as it pertains to the scope of real estate transaction processing. The first step is to define the project and its character. The first step is to define the project and its character. The project is a real estate transaction process, and the character of this project is to convey real property in exchange for deed and money. We define the customers and stakeholders. The customers are the buyer and the seller. The stakeholders are real estate brokers, attorneys, title company, mortgage company, insurance company, and escrow closing agent. The real estate transaction process is disconnected as the transaction providers are not true trading partners. The providers to this transaction supply chain are not linked to a supply chain platform. The result is that there are frequent delays and trade-offs to make the transaction finish according to schedule. Supply chain partners in a real estate transaction are oriented in a service capacity. The product they are providing is service. Realtors provide the inventory, lenders provide the financing, attorneys provide legal protection, title companies provide the guarantee of clear title or transfer, property and flood insurance covers potential future loss of the property, settlement agents close the transaction and act as an uninterested third-party fiduciary. Recorders are government agencies that provide legal and public notice for the true ownership of the property. After closing, servicers collect the mortgage payments, escrow insurance, and property taxes. Securitizers provide fresh capital to the real estate industry through securitization of residential mortgages. The real estate transaction process is a series of smaller processes overseen by the real estate broker. In managing the transaction process, buyer's attorney, seller's attorney, mortgage loan officer, appraiser, surveyor, home inspector, well inspector, pest inspector, termite inspector, general contractor all need a better method of communication and collaboration to provide throughput to the customer for a shorter delivery time, better customer value, and cost savings. Analyze. The first part of analyzing the process is to listen to the voice of the customers. The customer has specific expectations for each provider that are critical to satisfaction. The metric is what is most important of the service being provided. The data is collected via different channels and then analyzed over a period of time or sample size. This analysis gives us good insight as to what the customer wants out of each service provider, and after the transaction, builds a historical database to monitor and control the process. The first part of analyzing the process is similarly the voice of the process. The customer has specific expectations and alternative procedures that are critical from each service vendor. The outcome of the table is to develop an achievable target for the service provider to make the overall service. The data is collected via different channels and then analyzed. Measure. This partial view of a cost of poor quality index tells us who is most affected by weak links in the supply chain. It covers cost of prevention, appraisal and assessment of the individual provider's processes, and costs resulting from internal failures and external failures. In some models, actual figures would be assigned to each strike. However, in this model, we want to show how lack of prevention, failure, or assessment can affect each of the other supply chain members. This partial view of a cost of poor quality in this venue is extremely complex and subjective to the size of the supply chain. The transaction covers costs of prevention, appraisal, and assessment. Typically, this index would assign a dollar value to each item, resulting from due to the complexity and variance between provider firms. In some models, this table is a representation of who will incur costs for providing. However, in this model, we want to show how lack of prevention, failure, or assessment, while smaller firms of the other supply chain members feasible to conduct within the scope of this report. One survey conducted by the National Association of Realtors from April 6 to April 31, 2016, surveyed 55,490 realtors with a 4.2 response rate and determined the following. Delayed cost for transactions costs a consumer $410 on average. Canceled transaction cost for consumers $226 on average. The error rate on closing documents was a staggering 50.6%. Most of the time, it was 26% was incorrect name and address, incorrect fees, incorrect agent concessions, incorrect seller or buyer concessions, and other incorrect taxes, commissions, escrows, and prorations. The direct expense per transaction was an average of $609, which included the marketing, salaries, postage, notary, etc. Time and effort per transaction was 80 hours. Cost of poor quality in this why does the transaction complex and there are many opportunities to correct problems. However, 7% of all transactions ultimately fail. Typically, to better visualize the process, dollar value to each item and effect diagram. Due to the complexity of the variance, it gives us the most frequent occurrences. This table is a representation of who will incur costs for providing poor quality. Larger firms will be. So why does the transaction fail? There are many opportunities to correct problems. According to the National 7% of all transactions, 35% of all transactions fail. To better visualize the process, we create a cause and effect diagram. 22% fail within the diagram. It gives us the most frequent occurrences. 15% from unresolved contract contingencies. 11% from appraisal issues. 5% from a buyer losing their job. 4% from titling issues. 3% from insurance issues. And 28% from all other issues. So why did they fail? According to the National Association, similar to the cause 35 diagram of all transactions fail. In addition to the parties affected, it also has a possible 22% fail from issues related to financing. Key to lean management is the identification of the 7 wastes. Because we are dealing with service organizations in this model, we are not considering inventory and motion. However, the identification of waste areas for each member of the supply chain is significant in determining the potential problem areas to recognize for prevention of a failure. Once we have some statistics on the number of failures, we can calculate the defects per million opportunities. The defects per million opportunities in this table is calculated from all real estate transactions closed in the USA in 2015. Applying the statistic from the National Association of Realtors, where 94% closed, we can calculate the exact number of contracts which were terminated or considered defects. Dividing the number of defects by the closed rate of 94% gives us the total of all contract opportunities, closed or not. Dividing the defects by the opportunities and then multiplying by 1 million, we get the defects per million opportunities. Utilizing the Excel function normsinv, we calculate a sigma of 3.8. Once we have some statistics on the number of failures, we can calculate the defects per million opportunities. Root causes. Defects per million opportunities in this table is calculated from all real estate transactions closed in the USA in 2015 for each type of contract. Applying the statistic from the National Association of Realtors. The next step is the analysis and the determination of root causes. To find the areas most needed for improvement, we perform a failure mode and effect analysis of the services being offered. Typically, this is conducted for manufacturing equipment, but also takes into account operator involvement for machines, and therefore was a good evaluation for the service model. The FMEA analysis calculates the severity of each failure and the occurrence of each, multiplied together and then against the rate of detection to calculate a risk priority number, or RPN, which then tells us which failures are most likely to occur. To improve and reduce the rate of failure, we devise an action to avert the failure and/or correct it as it occurs. As a result of the FMEA, we find three significant areas for improvement. 1. Sellers should obtain a preliminary title for the property prior to contract execution. 2. Buyers should obtain a full credit approval from the mortgage company prior to contract execution. And 3. Order all processes required to close the transaction at the time of contract execution. The result is a new and improved process map. The result is estimated at a 55% reduction in processing time and reducing the overall process from 60 to 27 days. Applying the cost basis previously determined at $609 per transaction and calculating a 55% reduction gives us an estimated cost of $274 per transaction. Control. The control plan we are going to recommend is the PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act method. Now that we have identified the improvements, it is important to implement and maintain the gain. Implementation plan. Communicate the new process to all supply chain team members. Promote Kaizen, thinking to facilitate working together. Educate the supply chain providers how to access the information flow for better transparency and access to the transaction process. Do. Steps to take. 1. Use a pilot test group to verify process expectations. 2. Develop feedback forms and survey for later compilation to SPC charts. 3. Train brokers to be more cognizant of potential inspection problems. 4. Train brokers to better understand mortgage processing and credit guidelines for preemptive qualification of buyer prior to contract execution. Check. Monitor the plan. Ongoing and continual monitoring of the plan, we ask, 1. What are we trying to accomplish? 2. How will we know that change is an improvement? 3. What change can we make that will result in an improvement? 4. If the process is performing to plan, then standardize the activities. If not, then study why not and develop a new plan for improvement. 5. Focus on the next most important root cause and implement additional improvements. Check. Monitor the plan. Ongoing and continual monitoring of the plan, we ask, 1. What are we trying to accomplish? 2. At this how point, will we know that change is an improvement? An activity of awareness, 3. Detection and what change can we make errors that will result in an improvement and 4. Result in waste? If the process is performing to plan, then standardize. At this point, the poke yoke, an activity of awareness, detection, and prevention, or mistake errors that adversely affect the customer. The poke yoke and prevents errors in the process is a good method to employ. Process providers should be trained to perform the following on the job. 1. Anticipate how to do it wrong instead of how to do it right. 2. Perform spot check inspections at the source of each potential problem area. 3. Reduce the need for rework on a process step that is already defective. And 4. Simplify prevention and repair of defects by placing responsibility on the responsible provider or worker. We conclude that Six Sigma works in service organizations to 1. Identify waste, 2. Determine significant problem areas, 3. Minimize the failure rates, 4, improve overall process map. And 5, bring independent providers together as a team. And increase profitability.